I ended up going.
Good evening, I'm Jim Lehrer. On the NewsHour tonight, a summary of today's news, a talk with George Mitchell about his much-discussed plan for peace between Israel and the Palestinians. A report on how Arthur Andersen's corporate problems are affecting its employees. A debate about the detainees, those people held by the federal government in wake of the September 11 attacks. And a Roger Rosenblatt essay about TV news images of grief.
Major funding for the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer has been provided by...
Imagine a world where we're not diminishing resources, we're growing them. Ethanol, a cleaner burning fuel, made from corn. ADM, the nature of what's to come.
And by SBC Communications. From high-speed internet access and voice services to data transport, networking, and e-business solutions, when it comes to providing what it takes to help the world communicate, we're on it. SBC Communications.
And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. This program was also made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Israel continued to expand its military action in the West Bank today. At least 12 Palestinians and 1 Israeli soldier were reported killed in the fighting. We have a report from Tim Ewert of Independent Television News.
Edgy Israeli soldiers patrolled the alleyways of Bethlehem today. More than 100 Palestinian fighters were holed up in the Church of the Nativity, the birthplace of Christ, a few hundred yards from here. Israeli tanks now hold sway in the city, crushing anything that stands in their path. On this street, a line of destroyed cars and a bullet-riddled van were evidence of fierce fighting. The people of Bethlehem are hiding in their homes, afraid to venture out. This woman invited reporters to view the body of a neighbor, shot, she said, by Israeli troops. Another woman said, "We're civilians. They're getting into our houses and killing us." At a military checkpoint outside Bethlehem, meanwhile, church leaders trying to reach the city were turned away. They called on the troops to withdraw. Journalists are being kept away from the most sensitive areas in West Bank cities. Israeli police used tear gas to break up a march of Jewish and Arab peace activists who were trying to deliver food and medicine to the besieged city of Ramallah. Some in the crowd claimed they were beaten up. Israel's latest West Bank incursion came at the northern town of Jenin. Tanks and helicopters exchanged fire with Palestinian militiamen at a refugee camp.
And after that report was filed, Israeli tanks began rolling into Nablus, the largest city in the West Bank. At the White House today, spokesman Ari Fleischer repeated the president's view that Israel has the right to defend itself. He also said Mr. Bush remained committed to the two-part U.S. peace approach.
There's a tenet plan which focuses on creating an environment in which the peace talks can be more fruitful. There remains in place the Mitchell Accords, which are the more political areas that can be discussed. I think it goes without saying that it's going to be easier to make progress on the political front if the violence is reduced. And so it makes sense that both are important, but the focus has got to be, in the President's opinion, on reducing the violence to make the political talks more fruitful.
And we'll talk with former Senator Mitchell in a few moments. Also today, Secretary of State Powell said he was open to meeting with Israeli and Arab leaders during his trip to Europe next week. He told reporters, "We are examining all possibilities." He said any decision would depend on the events of the next few days. The chief executive of the European Union said today U.S. mediation efforts in the Middle East have failed. He told reporters in Brussels, Belgium, the United States should step aside as the main peacemaker. And in Luxembourg, EU foreign ministers agreed to send 2 top diplomats to Israel. They will press for a withdrawal from Palestinian territory, a ceasefire, and resumption of peace talks. They'll also demand to see Palestinian leader Arafat. He's been trapped in his compound in Ramallah. Egypt today limited diplomatic relations with Israel. The Egyptian information minister said all contacts will be suspended except those that serve the Palestinian cause. Demonstrators in Cairo have called for government action for the past 6 days. And in Beirut, Lebanon, police and soldiers beat back thousands of protesters outside the American embassy, and thousands more gathered outside a UN office. The new National Army of Afghanistan got its first soldiers today. 600 men graduated from a 6-week course in crowd control, patrolling, and first aid. Troops from 6 nations provided the training. The recruits came from every Afghan province and ethnic group. In Kabul, Interim Prime Minister Karzai said the new force was part of a larger effort.
We'll be working tirelessly and very, very effectively, strongly towards the reconstruction of Afghanistan. So that those men, young men, who don't want to be part of the army can go to other economic activities. And those who want to be part of the army can come and be part of the legitimate regular army of Afghanistan. That will definitely be there. But we will not allow groups of armed people or gangs to call themselves armies.
U.S. officials have said they hope the full Afghan army could be in place by the end of this year. They've said the size will depend on money, and little has been raised so far. The Justice Department will review the treatment of post-September 11 detainees. In a statement released today, the department said it will determine if basic rights were violated. Various civil liberties groups have made that complaint. Inspectors will look at 2 facilities in New York and New Jersey. We'll have more on this story in a moment. Also coming, George Mitchell, Hard Times at Arthur Anderson, and a Roger Rosenblatt essay. Now, our newsmaker interview with former Senator George Mitchell, architect of the Mitchell Plan for bringing peace between Israelis and Palestinians. He headed an international committee created by President Clinton when the peace process began collapsing nearly 2 years ago. The committee's recommendations, including a freeze on settlements and a crackdown on terrorism, were accepted a year ago by both Prime Minister Sharon and Palestinian leader Arafat. They've also been endorsed by President Bush. Senator, welcome.
Thanks, Jim, for having me.
What's your reading of just how bad this situation is right now?
It's very bad in several respects. Of course, most immediately tragic is the tremendous loss of life and destruction of property that's occurring as a result of the immediate violence. But also, I think, is a very real concern, the potential for the violence spreading. You've just shown scenes in Cairo and Beirut and other places, and the possibility of a regional conflagration drawing in other countries is real and dangerous, and something which I believe we must address.
Is that the worst case scenario for you at this point, that this thing really could expand? You think that's a real possibility?
I think it is possible. No one can assign numerical odds to it, but I think it is possible, and I think it's something that does concern the administration, and is one reason why I think you're seeing an intensification of American efforts in the region. The governments there face a political problem. Indeed, every government faces political problems, including our own, including the Israeli government, including the Palestinians. But the Arab governments want, as a matter of their national interest and policy, to maintain good relations with the United States, and yet they confront very large majorities of their citizens who are angry and hostile to the United States because of what they perceive as our bias in the Middle East.
So what you're saying is that if something doesn't cool off pretty soon, the Arab nations may have to come in militarily on the side of the Palestinians?
Oh, I doubt they'll want to do that. In fact, I'm certain they all don't want to do that. But one can never predict the chain of events once violence is unleashed, and one cannot rule out that possibility. In fact, I'm certain that King Abdullah of Jordan and President Mubarak of Egypt, the Saudi rulers, the last thing they want is to get drawn into a regional war, particularly with the vast military superiority that Israel has. But you can't rule anything out in a situation as dangerous and volatile as this.
Has it been as dangerous and as volatile before, to your knowledge, while you've been dealing with this?
Not in recent years. Obviously, there have been several cases of outright war,
sure.
but not in recent years, no. It's very dangerous now.
All right, in this context, does the Mitchell Plan, drawn, as I just said, 2 years ago, endorsed by both sides a year ago, does it still have relevance?
It does have relevance because it's really pretty basic and simple and we think self-evident. What we said is that the only way they're going to resolve this is not by the use of force on either side, but rather by ending the violence, rebuilding confidence through a series of reciprocal measures that require both sides to do things, and then resuming negotiations.
All right. Lay out briefly the reciprocal measures that each have to do under your plan to make this thing work.
Well, there are 18 of them, so
okay.
you don't want me to lay them all out, but let me identify.
Give me some highlights.
All right, some highlights. You put one up on the screen.
Sure.
A freezing of all settlement activity by the government of Israel, which is a very, very critical issue.
Freezing meaning they don't have to eliminate them, they don't have to get rid of them, they just can't build any new ones.
Stop construction.
Okay.
Right. Stop building and expanding, even for so-called natural growth. On the other side, we require a specific condemnation of the use of terrorism by the Palestinian Authority, by Chairman Arafat, major efforts to prevent terrorist activities, that is to arrest, prosecute, and punish those who are so engaged, and to take affirmative action to prevent it. For example, many of these incidents are triggered by individual Palestinian gunmen going into populated areas and firing on Israeli populated areas that are nearby. That induces a massive reaction by the Israeli military, which then induces the kind of cycle of violence you've seen. Well, the Palestinians have to make a greater effort to prevent such gunmen from, in effect, initiating these activities. We call for a strong effort to cease incitement, hatred, the demonization of the opposition. We call upon the
And how are they supposed to do that? How do you get somebody to quit demonizing the other?
Well, you stop doing it in schools. You stop doing it over television and radio that the government has an influence in. You ask those government officials who are within your authority to stop engaging in such activities. Those are some of the ways. Mm-hmm. We also call upon the government of Israel to withdraw its military forces to the point that they were in September of 2000, before this violence broke out, to lift the siege on the Palestinian areas, to pay to the Palestinians the taxes that have been withheld by the Israelis, to permit, within the constraints of their own security needs, some degree of commerce and employment. What you have now is a devastating situation to both sides. The Palestinian economy has been destroyed. It's simply been destroyed. The Israeli economy, which hasn't got that much attention, is also very badly hurt. Huge expenses for this military operation, at an almost total end of tourism, and a lot of other very difficult situations for them. So what we said is you've got to do something to arrest this downward spiral, this complete loss of confidence and this upsurge of hatred and mistrust, and then get into negotiation.
But it didn't happen. Both sides said, okay, fine, great idea, George Mitchell, but it didn't happen. Now, I don't expect you to give us a complete history lesson, but why? Was it the two men? We had a discussion here last night that the animosity between Arafat and Sharon is such that it didn't naturally lead to an accommodation. Are there other factors? How would you analyze what happened?
Well, I analyze it this way. First, their objectives are not the same. The Israelis have a state, they want security. The Palestinians don't have a state, they want a state. Contiguous, geographically, economically viable. The Israeli concern is that if they do everything that our report asks for, and they've said this to me, Senator, we'll do everything you want, and we're likely to get 6 more suicide bombers in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem next week. In other words, their fear is that their actions will be seen not as gestures for peace, but as signs of weakness that will only reward the past terrorism and encourage more in the future. The Palestinian mirror concern is that they will do whatever we ask, stopping the violence, which now seems to be their only leverage, go through this whole effort of risking civil war by arresting their own people and prosecuting them and so forth. And what they will get is endless more years of discussion with a dramatic increase in settlements and settlers, making the ultimate Palestinian state, and not only impractical, but physically impossible because it cannot be geographically contiguous. So those are their fears, and that's what has to be addressed. You have to figure out a way to create at least a modest amount of confidence that if you take a step, the other side is going to take another step.
Whose responsibility is it to create this atmosphere you're talking about, to take this step, take that step? What happens next, Senator, to make this work?
It can only be done by the United States.
Only by the United States?
Only by the United States, with the participation of the parties.
EU said today, forget it. The United States has failed.
I saw that.
Russia, the UN, Arab states need to get involved, and the U.S. needs to kind of step aside as the sole thing. How do you respond to that?
In the making of peace, the first thing you must do is expunge the word failure from your vocabulary. It takes perseverance, it takes patience, and anyone can claim failure at any point short of success. The peace negotiations in Northern Ireland, which I chaired, lasted 2 years. For the first 700 days, they could have been and were described as a failure. And on the 701st day, we had a success. So if you say things are going bad, it hasn't worked, there are setbacks, so let's quit, you're in effect ceding the ground to those who want to engage in violence, who are unwilling to compromise in any way. And the fact of the matter is, and I respect Prodi, I know him, he's
Just the EU executive director, right?
Yeah, he's a former Italian prime minister, he's a fine guy. But the fact of the matter is, he knows, everyone in the Middle East knows, that only the United States has the capacity and the ability not just to create the conditions in which an agreement can be reached by the parties, but to enforce an agreement once reached. And that's a very critical point. It's one thing we learned in the Balkans, and we've learned in Northern Ireland. It's hard to get an agreement. It's much harder to implement an agreement.
Now, it's been suggested in the last 24 hours, Tom Friedman in the New York Times included, said maybe we need to start thinking about a peace force in there. Once you negotiate, get an international peace force on the ground, that's the only way you're going to keep these folks from killing one another. Does that make sense to you?
It depends upon the circumstances. That was a very much discussed issue before our commission. The Palestinians asked us to recommend an international protection force. The Israelis opposed it. We concluded that if one or both sides does not favor the insertion of a force, it is almost certain to become itself entangled in the violence. Now, we cited the fact that in the Middle East right now, there are third-party forces, including Americans, who are there with the consent of both and who are performing a useful function. But you have to have the right predicate for it.
Let's get back a step.
Yeah.
At what level, how does the United States now exert what you believe is the only power that can make this work?
I believe the President and the Secretary of State are well aware of what's needed. You have seen in recent weeks a significant increase in the level and intensity of American involvement. I think that is likely to increase even further in the days ahead. That plainly means direct intervention and action by the Secretary of State and the President, but only they can be the judges of when that should occur and under what circumstances. They have to know that their doing something is going to produce a result, and I think they do know that, and I think they're going to go ahead and do everything possible to exert American leverage.
Have you been in contact with, are you in contact with Secretary Powell or anybody at the State Department, anybody who's involved in this?
Yes, I've talked to Secretary Powell and others in the State Department.
Do you get the feeling is that they are, you do believe they are now aware it's going to take some high-level action or this thing isn't going to move?
Yes, I do.
Have they asked you to participate in any way?
No, they've not, other than to discuss it with
Sure. If they did ask you to participate, would you?
I'm one of 5 members of the committee. Former Senator Rudman was the other American. There were 3 Europeans, the former president of Turkey, the European, in effect, foreign minister, Javier Solana, and the then foreign minister of Norway. Before we delivered our report to the president through the Secretary of State, we discussed this among ourselves, and I was authorized to say to the president and Secretary of State, which I did, that if they wanted us to, we would do anything further that we were asked to do under the circumstances.
Does it make sense for something like, some group like yours to be involved in this at this point?
Well, I think that the President and Secretary of State have to be given flexibility in this. They have to be left to judge the right person, the right timing, and the right circumstances. And I don't think they should feel any necessity of saying it must be this group or this plan. As I said earlier, if you read our plan, it's basic common sense. It's not rocket science. You could call it the Lehrer plan, you could call it the Joe Jones plan, as well as the Mitchell plan. What's important is that it gets done.
Senator, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim.
Still to come on the NewsHour tonight, the fallout for Arthur Andersen employees, the September 11 detainees, and a Roger Rosenblatt essay. Elizabeth Brackett of WTTW Chicago has our Andersen story.
It's been 27 years since Eileen Dowd first came to work at Arthur Andersen. She began as a clerk, and today at 53, she is the Director of Human Resources, dealing with the personnel concerns of some 4,000 employees in the Andersen home office in Chicago.
Did you all read it?
Yeah.
Is that not great?
And today, the biggest concern is whether their company will survive. Employees were stunned by the indictment of the entire firm by the Justice Department.
The indictment catalogs allegations of widespread criminal conduct by the Arthur Andersen firm.
The indictment charges Arthur Andersen with one count of obstruction of justice for wholesale destruction of documents relating to their work for Enron.
I think it's unjust because it is blaming the entire firm for the actions of a few. I did not do anything to bring the circumstances that are now facing me about. I come to work, I do my job. I don't know anything about Enron. I did not know anything about document destruction or anything else. I feel like I've been treated as if I am the criminal. I have to make different choices in my life. I have to be prepared to lose my life the way it is, and all because of this indictment.
The indictment has left the 89-year-old venerable accounting and consulting firm scrambling to stay alive. More than 100 clients have dropped Andersen, and the number increases daily. 6 international Andersen partners have said they would join other firms. CEO Joseph Berardino resigned weeks after admitting to a congressional panel that individuals in Andersen's Houston office shredded Enron-related documents. But in a March 14th letter to Andersen attorneys, the government contends that the conduct was not the isolated act of a few low-level employees. Rather, the obstruction efforts engaged the attention of numerous Andersen personnel, including partners in multiple offices, including Chicago. Chicago partner Robert Wetland is on the business consulting side of the firm. Like most of the 1,700 Chicago partners, he says he knew nothing about Enron and was shocked by the indictment.
The word indictment is not a term that I use regularly, so frankly, I couldn't have forecasted these things any differently than anyone else. So a lot of things are new to me in this environment, but certainly the firm being indicted was a great surprise.
The indictment affects not only the 85,000 Andersen employees worldwide, 28,000 in the U.S. It also impacts the lives of 1,066 retired Andersen partners. 67-year-old Robert Kelly retired 5 years ago following a stroke. As a managing partner for international affairs, Kelly had responsibility for all global issues affecting the firm. He says if the firm folds, retirees would lose their $3,500 a month retirement benefit, plus health care coverage.
They should have taken a page out of the military book and said, hey, we need one of those smart bombs. And just go in there and get these 6 or 8 or 10 people, maybe 20, that may have committed some obstruction of justice. But what did they do? They pitched a nuclear bomb, and the collateral damage is everywhere, including me.
We are Arthur Andersen!
The indictment motivated Andersen employees to take action. Rallies were held in cities across the country. In Chicago, 4,000 people picketed at the downtown headquarters. 24-year-old Katie Dorn is a campus recruiter for Andersen. She began on the consulting side as an intern, but switched to recruiting when she joined the firm full-time 3 years ago.
I decided to go to the rally because there was such a sense of community amongst all of us that I wouldn't have missed out on that, first of all, in a heartbeat. Secondly, I think that really I felt that the more people were out there, the more this was going to be seen. And so, you know, even though I'm just another person, I definitely wanted to be a part of it. It made me feel absolutely thrilled to be part of this organization. It made me feel excited about the prospect that, you know, this could take a turn for the better and we could pull out of this and come together as a firm.
The employees' campaign also included full-page ads in major newspapers across the country, laying out the firm's concerns. The Justice Department responded to the Andersen employees' rallies by filing court documents, saying the employees' actions could potentially tamper witness testimony and unfairly influence the jury selection. The accusation infuriated Kelly.
They say it's obstruction of justice. I say it's destruction of an institution called Arthur Andersen. And somewhere, as I recall, we've got equal protection under the laws. And the right to assembly is one of those rights in the 10 Bills of Rights.
But the retired partners have also criticized the firm's actions in the crisis. They have filed suit against the current partners to try and prevent them from breaking up the company by taking their clients and leaving for other firms.
We're simply asking if, for them to live up to the responsibilities of the partnership agreement and the inter-firm agreements. That's it. You know, imagine this. You've got a body that's bleeding. You know, they're bleeding clients, they're bleeding people, and they're bleeding money, much of which is going to some lawyer somewhere. And what we're trying to do is say, hey, let's stop the bleeding, get the ship upright, and sail on the course.
Andersen has denied published reports that 6,000 layoffs are imminent. Still, worried employees are making a steady stream to Eileen Dowd's office. Because Andersen is self-insured, health insurance is a big concern.
I get questions like, you know, just last week, an employee called because his 9-year-old son is scheduled for open heart surgery in June, and he wants to verify that he'll still have insurance for that. Well, I pray and hope that in June we're still going concern.
And Dowd has concerns of her own.
I have always, in my life, had two major commitments, to my son and to my job. How do I explain to him that his options for college might be impacted by this indictment? And how do I explain the justice of that, which I can't figure out for myself?
Many Andersen employees see a plan put forward by former Federal Reserve Chairman Paul Volcker, after being hired by Andersen, as the best hope for saving the firm. The plan would install a new 7-member board, would oust current management as needed, and shed all non-auditing business. Volcker introduced 2 partners to guide the transition. A successor to Joseph Berardino is expected to be named shortly.
Obviously, the firm will be smaller. It will be smaller because if it's an auditing-only firm, it is going to lose the consulting, the tax, and some of the ancillary things that it was done.
Volcker also says the government must drop or settle the indictment to make the plan work. That is seen as a long shot by many. But even with all the bad news, partners like Robert Wentland, whose job on the consulting side would disappear under the Volcker plan, remain hopeful.
I think the momentum is certainly to move in the direction of separating that, and by adopting the Volcker plan, I think we're suggesting that, yes.
So do you feel more at risk than say, the people on the audit side?
At risk in terms of what?
Losing your job?
Boy, I don't feel that, no.
Do you feel at risk for losing your job?
Oh, I don't think so.
Others are less optimistic. Have you started sending out resumes?
No, and you know, it's on my to-do list to write it this weekend. I am taking those steps to prepare, but honestly, the hardest thing is just doing the mental start to believe this, because it really is real.
Robert Kelly takes a longer view.
I believe in the myth of the phoenix, and the phoenix was reborn morally, ethically, after hitting a very difficult time, and I think that's the same for Anderson.
At the moment, Anderson is expected in court on the obstruction of justice charge on May 6th.
Now the treatment of people detained by the federal government since and because of September 11. Betty Ann Bowser begins our coverage.
The wave of arrests and detentions of Middle Easterners and South Asians began within hours of the terror attacks. On September 12th, 2 Indian nationals carrying box cutters were arrested in Texas and charged with credit card fraud. The next day at New York area airports, police detained 10 people of Middle Eastern descent. In October, Attorney General John Ashcroft defended the arrests, comparing them with the government's crackdown on organized crime in the 1960s.
Robert Kennedy's Justice Department, it is said, would arrest mobsters for spitting on the sidewalk. Let the terrorists among us be warned. If you overstay your visas, even by 1 day, we will arrest you. If you violate a local law, we will hope that you will and work to make sure that you are put in jail and be kept in custody as long as possible.
But many detainees, like Yemeni native Lamia Sobi, have complained about their treatment. She spent 16 days in jail for visa violations and was not allowed to wear her headscarf.
I was basically scared because they really scared me, and I didn't want to break down and cry in front of them.
Syed Mahmoud Hassan, who's back home in New Jersey now, was arrested and kept in jail for 5 weeks, even though he was never linked to terrorism.
After this happened with me, I'm feeling very uncomfortable now, because I'm also afraid that anything can happen anytime.
A new report by Amnesty International found that, quote, most prisoners were men of Arab or South Asian origin. A number of detainees continue to be deprived of certain basic human rights, including medical attention and access to an attorney. The Justice Department's decision to study the treatment of detainees comes after months of complaints about the conditions of those placed in custody. At the end of October, more than 1,200 people were in custody. However, the Justice Department will not release their names or details about most of their cases. In November, the Attorney General explained why.
For those detained by the INS, I do not think it is responsible for us in a time of war, when our objective is to save American lives, to advertise to the opposing side that we have al-Qaeda membership in custody. When the United States is at war, I will not share valuable intelligence with our enemies.
Since then, immigration officials have released several hundred people who were later deported. The Justice Department has stopped issuing overall arrest totals. In February, there were 327 in custody on immigration violations, but others are being held as material witnesses or on unrelated criminal charges. Civil rights groups have also criticized the Justice Department's targeting of so-called absconders, another 6,000 men from Middle Eastern and South Asian countries who had violated or overstayed their visas. Now, federal agents are trying to find those men, hoping to arrest and deport them. The Bush administration is also under fire for seeking voluntary interviews with some 8,000 additional men from countries on the U.S. terrorism list. Ashcroft insists the ongoing process is legitimate.
We're being as kind and fair and gentle as we can in terms of inviting people to participate in helping us. And we have not identified people based on their ethnic origin.
We have identified individuals who are not citizens, but based on the country which issued their passports.
The Attorney General said it was these persons' quote, responsibility to help the government prevent new attacks.
And to Margaret Warner.
To discuss the government's post-9/11 dragnet, we're joined by Kate Martin, Director of the Center for National Security Studies, a human rights and civil liberties organization in Washington, Andrew McBride, former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. He's now in private practice. Jan Ting, a professor of law at Temple University. He served as Assistant Commissioner of the INS during the Clinton administration. And Muzaffar Chisti, an immigration lawyer and a senior analyst at the Migration Policy Institute, a think tank in Washington. Welcome to you all. Kate Martin, beginning with you. What's your overall assessment of this dragnet as it's evolved since 9/11?
Well, I think what we've seen is that this is, in fact, a dragnet based on religion and ethnicity. It is not a targeted law enforcement effort aimed at finding individuals who actually have links to terrorism. We've seen secret arrests of hundreds of individuals, 2 of whom maybe have some connection to the terrorists, all of whom are either Arab or Muslim or mistaken to be Arab or Muslim. And I think we've seen a whole series of measures which give the message and send the message from the Justice Department that the Arab community and the Muslim community are communities under suspicion.
Mr. McBride, racial profiling here?
I disagree with that profoundly. I think after September 11, the Attorney General was charged with making sure that there were no further attacks, and I think he did so in a common sense and prudent manner by identifying country of origin, visa status, and certain other criteria to use to try and identify possible al-Qaeda members. This is al-Qaeda profiling, not racial profiling. You could be from any one of a number of countries. And the point is that after the first attacks that had been so successful in hiding themselves from law enforcement, it was necessary to disrupt any future attacks. I think down the road we may be able to refine our tactics, but the initial which you have to call a success. The initial goal was to make sure there was not a second wave of attacks, and the Attorney General has been successful in that.
Mr. Chisti, since all the 9/11 hijackers were young males of Middle Eastern origin, do you think there's anything wrong with focusing on them throughout these policies, the detentions, the deportations, and the questioning?
First of all, I mean, keeping aside the constitutional issues that an operation like that would entail, it would be totally ineffective. I mean, if you look at the entire Middle Eastern population of the United States, it's run into millions. It's just physically impossible to track down and interrogate and detain all the Middle Eastern men, hoping that that would lead results of ties to terrorism. Second important point to make is that if you look at 3 or 4 well-known cases about the al-Qaeda sympathizers that we have apprehended since 9/11, it's the shoe bomber who we picked up on the airplane. It's Charles Bishop, this young kid who flew a plane in Tampa, Florida. It's John Walker Lind. These are not Arab American men. If we had been simply looking at Arab American men, we would not have caught the 3 most important suspects that we have caught linked to al-Qaeda since 9/11. So just targeting enforcement on the basis of profile because they fit an ethnic community just is ineffective. And I think the proof is in the pudding. The 1,200 people that have been caught in the dragnet since 9/11, we haven't shown any connection to these 1,200 people to al-Qaeda or terrorism. In fact, the only 2 people that we have caught since 9/11 are the shoe bomber and Mrs. Zakaria, both of which took place not as a result of the apprehensions after 9/11, these detainees, but out of very good, simple intelligence and by vigilance of flight attendants on the plane.
And Mr. Ting, what's your view of this dragnet?
I think the dragnet makes a lot of sense. Let me just say first that I served in the first Bush administration, not in the Clinton administration. But I think in response to the last speaker, no one is profiling Arab American men. We're profiling foreign men who have temporarily come to the United States in the past couple of years. It seems to me that's a legitimate focus. The government has a compelling interest, as Mr. McBride said, in preventing another terrorist attack. We know that all the September 11th terrorists were young males from other countries who came to the United States recently. So that's a reasonable profile. I think the case could be made for more profiling and not less profiling. I don't think that it's racial profiling. I don't think it's ethnic profiling in the sense of identifying people on the basis of skin color or on the basis of appearance. As the Attorney General says, it's clearly being done on the basis of documentation. That's a reasonable basis, I think, for carrying out an effort which I think has been very successful.
Ms. Martin, that is the case, isn't it, that it's really about the country of origin?
Well, that's not, first of all, we don't know. The government's refused to give us the names of hundreds of individuals whom it has jailed. And we don't know on what basis they pick them out. It's also not true that it's solely aimed at non-citizens. Some, again, we don't know how many, number of citizens, all of whom were either Arabs or Muslims or taken for that, were in fact arrested in the weeks after September 11th.
But are they in the group that's still being, not the group being detained on immigration charges?
No, but some of them may still be in jail. Again, we don't know. Some of them may be in jail on material witness warrants, which the government's been completely secretive about. It is clear from the government's own admissions that the hundreds of people in jail have not been linked to terrorism or to terrorist activities or to the hijackers. The government has admitted in the lawsuit that was brought that it has cleared more than 300 of the people. It is working on clearing the rest, but it had a policy of jail first, ask questions second, and that policy swept up only Arabs and Muslims.
Let's look at the secrecy aspect, the one that your lawsuit is about. Mr. McBride, why the secrecy?
Well, you know, I think there's a myth of secrecy here in the sense that the Department of Justice has not prohibited any lawyer who represents an INS detainee or any INS detainee from identifying themselves. And of course, when criminal charges are brought, after an arrest, an indictment is unsealed and the matter is public. But I think for the Department of Justice to give out a list of all the individuals that it has detained in its investigations for INS violations, material witness warrants, or in criminal charges, first of all, I do agree with the Attorney General. It does tell our enemies where we have successfully disrupted them. And secondly, I think it's unfair to the people being detained. It essentially would be a government blacklist. Here's our list of people who we picked up after September 11th. If those people wish to identify themselves, they're free to do so, but I don't see any reason why the government should issue a list of their names.
Mr. Ting, comment on that point, and also the broader array of charges, for instance, in the Amnesty International report, that these people being detained, most of them don't seem to have a right to counsel. I mean, they aren't guaranteed a right to counsel, that they're held for months without specific charges against them, and that even sometimes after they're cleared, quote unquote, or at least nothing is found about them, they're still being held up even from being deported. What's the rationale here?
Well, I think people need to understand that immigration cases are different from run-of-the-mill criminal cases. Immigration cases are not considered criminal cases, and for that reason, a lot of the constitutional protections that would normally apply in the normal criminal case do not, in fact, apply in immigration cases. Aliens subject to removal proceedings cannot, for example, demand a jury trial. They're not entitled to invoke the exclusionary rule if evidence against them has been improperly obtained. They're not guaranteed a right to counsel unless they can pay for it themselves. And that's because immigration law is not criminal, it's civil, it's administrative, and that's the way our immigration system has been set up. So that's just part of the normal functioning of the immigration system. Now, no one wants to hear about anyone who's being abused in prison and whether someone should be able to wear their headscarf or not, but that's a different issue, it seems to me, that these people are being held in accordance with normal immigration procedures. It's not unusual for people to be detained until they can be removed from the United States, until their removal from the United States is assured. And I think the government obviously has ongoing investigations going on. They are investigating people that they suspect of terrorism. They don't have enough evidence to make a clear case of terrorism yet. And they may never be able to have that evidence, but they want to build the case that they can, whether it's on other criminal charges or whether it's on immigration charges.
Mr. Chiste, do you agree with that this is perfectly legal under immigration law and procedure?
It's perfectly legal, but it's completely discriminatory. I mean, there are a large number of people in this country who have had immigration violations, but we are not going after each one of them. We are going after a selective group of people only on the basis of their national origin or religion or race. And that is very offensive to our very core constitutional values. I think that's the set of concerns that people have here. And it's not just one single act of the Department of Justice since 9/11 that has raised the concern among the civil rights community. It is the cumulative effect of the policies of the Department of Justice since 9/11 that is creating the kind of dragnet concern that people are talking about. I mean, it's the secrecy around the 1,200 people. It's to decide that the proceedings in many of these cases will be kept close to the press, be kept close to the members of the family, and that lawyer-client communication will not be privileged, and people who the judge decides, an immigration judge decides, no longer need to be held, that the Attorney General suddenly decides that despite the judge's decision, they'll be held over. It's only Arab Americans or Muslims who have been absconding after the final order of deportation that they have been targeted for enforcement. And it's only 5,000, and now I think 3,000 have been added of young men from the Middle East and Muslims from South Asia who have been targeted for questioning. So it's not just one single issue, it's the cumulative effect of the set of policies by the Department of Justice since 9/11 that I think is what we all are concerned about.
You're shaking your head, Mr. McBride.
I disagree in the sense that the absconder issue, for instance, these are people who have had hearings, who have been held to be deportable, are here in violation of the law of the United States.
And this was before 9/11.
This was before 9/11. And to say that as a matter of law enforcement resources, we're going to put our effort on deporting illegal people who are illegal in the United States who fit a profile of individuals likely to be associated with al-Qaeda is prudent. If North Korea had declared war on us or launched a missile at New York, we would be looking for illegal North Korean immigrants and deporting them from the United States as a potential danger. I think here al-Qaeda has declared war on the United States, and we have to look for adherents to al-Qaeda and get them out of the United States. And country of origin and visa status are legitimate criteria to use.
And Margaret, if I can add to that.
I mean, al-Qaeda...
Go ahead, Mr. Ting, first, and then I'll try to get back to all of you.
There are no Arab Americans involved in the absconder initiative. I mean, as Mr. McBride says, it only involves foreign nationals who have already exhausted all their administrative remedies. All their appeal rights have been exhausted. They've been ordered removed from the United States. The immigration judges work for the Attorney General. They enforce immigration policy, and there are no Arab Americans or Muslim Americans included in this absconder initiative.
All right, you were trying to get in.
No, but it is important, I think, to recognize...
I'll get right back to you, Mr. Chiste. Go ahead.
...that there are 8...
I was saying that al-Qaeda clearly has declared a war against the United States, but all the Arab countries have not declared a war against the United States. Pakistan and India have not declared a war against the United States. There are absconders for similar reasons from all over the world, and we are not targeting against them. We are clearly engaging in selective enforcement only on the basis of national origin and religion, and that, I think, is constitutionally impermissible.
Ms. Martin.
And I think it's important to recognize that there are 8 million undocumented non-citizens living in the United States. They have U.S. citizen children. They have U.S. citizen spouses. If President Bush has his way, many of them will be granted amnesty to become legal residents of the United States. And that what we have seen here is, rather than making a case and finding those individuals who might have some link to al-Qaeda, the Justice Department instead uses national origin, ethnicity, or religion as a proxy for link to terrorism. That is discriminatory, it is unconstitutional in my view, and it is bad law enforcement.
Mr. Ting?
As the Attorney General has said, you know, if anyone thinks that there's anything unconstitutional in the way that this questioning of the recent arrivals in the United States is going on, if anyone thinks there's anything unconstitutional about the absconder initiative, they ought to bring a lawsuit. No one has brought a lawsuit. I think it's because the people who've looked at this question recognize that there's no constitutional issue involved here, that this is a legitimate government function. The government would like to find all 300,000 absconders and remove them from the United States. And if they had that capability to do it all at once, they would. The reality is you have to start somewhere. It's reasonable under the circumstances in our effort to disrupt the al-Qaeda efforts in the United States to put this group first.
Right, and that has to be the last word. Thank you all very much.
Finally tonight, essayist Roger Rosenblatt looks at the images of sorrow and loss that we see every night on television.
Since September 11th, there has been a continuous display of grief and sorrow on television. Various, episodic, fractional. Like a slideshow, it appears suddenly between the Olympics and the Grammys.
We will take loss of life, and I'm sad for loss of life. And today we've got the mom and dad of a brave soldier who lost his life, and her brother. God bless you.
Pictures of the families of soldiers killed in Afghanistan. A picture of Andrea Yates in shackles after she killed her 5 children. Or of her husband on the way to testify in court. Picture of reporter Danny Pearl, or of his widow. A picture of the family of the woman mauled to death by dogs in California.
Yes.
Of the Van Damme parents pleading hopelessly for the return of their daughter Danielle. Many pictures of the widows and orphans of the World Trade Center killings.
This is my husband. And I'm just so afraid that he's hurt and that he wants me there and I can't hold his hand.
That is where the recent slideshow began, along with the slide of emotions, down, down, until we have grown accustomed to grief on public exhibition, and we watch with equal sympathy and puzzlement. It is hard to grasp all this sadness. If it is shown in public for public consumption, one should know what to make of it, what to do with it, what it is good for. Show a criminal on TV, we think, lock him up. Show a hero, we think, praise him. Show a war, as the Vietnam War was shown over and over until its pointless anarchy was exposed, and we understood that we were not in favor of that war. But grief is something different. We're like children watching grown-ups in despair. We know that something has gone terribly wrong, but we are helplessly watching. The difficulty arises from the fact that one cannot know grief for someone else. One can only recognize it. There are other things that one cannot know for someone else. The compulsion of addictions, depression, family hatreds and betrayals.
Tomorrow on Springer, Yvonne is pregnant by Alicia's boyfriend. Now
this is why I think shows like Jerry Springer and Ricky Lake are so successful. They appear to deal with great personal secrets, but they are not our secrets. And we do not deeply care about someone else's infidelity or sex change operation or the torments that derive from love. Because we do not care, all these people are turned into clowns. They may suffer for themselves, but for the viewers, they are entertainers. When it comes to grief, however, one wants to feel something more than the automatic reflex of a tear. Grief is not freakish or cheap. Grief is serious loss, permanent loss. Television shows us glimpses of those who have lost, but does not show us loss. This is not loss. Ceci n'est pas perdu. This is the picture of loss, broken into images like chips of glass, reflecting off a facet, a slice of grimace, a glint of sigh. Not whole, nothing whole. I see Danielle Van Damme's mother drowned in tears in a courtroom. I cannot know her pain, thank God. I can only know the picture of her pain. Television is selective with its exposures. It wants us to buy things, including the news. We see people suffering and we buy suffering, the way we would buy a refrigerator or a roll of paper towels, advertised for whatever it purports to be. But we do not know their grief. Only they know that. And the distance between us is as heartbreaking as if we did. I'm Roger Rosenblatt.
Again, the major developments of this day. Israel continued to expand its military action in the West Bank. At least 12 Palestinians and 1 Israeli soldier were reported killed in the fighting. On the NewsHour tonight, former Senator Mitchell said there was a real possibility the conflict could lead to a regional war. We'll see you online and again here tomorrow evening. I'm Jim Lehrer. Thank you and good night.
Major funding for the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer has been provided by...
Imagine a world where no child begs for food. While some will look on that as a dream, others will look long and hard and get to work. ADM, the nature of what's to come.
And by SBC Communications. From high-speed internet access and voice services to data transport, networking, and e-business solutions, when it comes to providing what it takes to help the world communicate, we're on it. SBC Communications.
And by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. This program was also made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you. Video cassettes of the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer are available from PBS Video. Call 1-800-328-PBS-1.
This is PBS.
As the war between the Israelis and the Palestinians intensifies, Frontline goes behind the lines on both sides. How did a conflict once fought with stones escalate towards all-out war? Battle for the Holy Land. Next time on Frontline.
That's tonight at 9 here on OPB.
This week on Now with Bill Moyers, why have an estimated 20,000 Americans settled in Israel's West Bank?
This land belongs to us, and there's proof all through the Bible.
Should they be there? A Now special report, Friday at 9 on this PBS station.
I've been listening to NPR for years and years and years, and I always said that when Anthro could afford it, I wanted Anthro to be one of the underwriters for OPB, because the companies that do the underwriting seem to me to be companies that really care about the world, and I wanted Anthro to be one of them.
Thank you for calling Anthro. This is Shannon. How can I help you?
So in 1995, we were able to financially underwrite for OPB, and it has been the most wonderful experience. I'm so proud to be affiliated with an organization as special as OPB and all the things it does for our community.
Does your company encourage a balance between family and business? Nominate your family-friendly employer for the Families in Good Company Awards, presented by Children First for Oregon. The deadline for entry is April 30th. Call 503-236-9754 for applications, or check the link at opb.org.
Next time, Antiques Roadshow UK quietly invades Eastnor Castle in Herefordshire.
Oh, we've got some inkwells down here as well. I was hoping we might see these. This is like Christmas. And this bowl, when you turn it up, could almost be a hat. See, it's like that. Marvelous thing.
Talk about mad dogs and Englishmen. Watch Antiques Roadshow, UK.
That's Saturday at 7 here on OPB.
Next time on Globe Trekker. Are you ready for paradise?
I can't wait to get in there.
Join Ian Wright on an island-hopping adventure in search of baubles, beauties, and beasts. We'll take you there on the next Globe Trekker.
That's Saturday at 8 here on OPB.